Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the week. Today is the sixth day of Christmas. And so, what does that represent? It represents the 6 days of creation. So, in 6 days, God created the world, and on the seventh day, he rested. And the 6 days also represent 6,000 years of humanity, according to the Bible. And in the 7,000th year, we'll have the millennial kingdom, which is the time of rest. So that's very exciting. On that note, let's think about our own creation, our own Garden of Eden. What are we going to grow this year? What are we going to feed our family with? Start thinking about that. January is really a planning month, okay? It's a time to get rid of the old and bring in the new, okay? So think about what you want in your garden. Things that we will be starting inside in January will include maybe peppers. Some people start tomatoes. I find that's too early for me here in Kentucky, but um, you can start some of your peas and beans, or not beans, but peas inside. They're a cool weather crop. You can start your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, um, cabbage. They like a cool weather, but if you don't get them started soon enough, then they aren't ready before it gets hot. So you can get two crops out of them if you start early enough. So we're going to be looking at that. I think later this week we'll walk out to the barn and I'll show you my grow tower. It's doing well with lettuces and some brassicas, and we'll kind of get an idea how that's going. I still have another tower to get started with as a aeroponics, but aquaponics, but I haven't done that yet. Um, there's a gentleman in Florida that has done it on large scale outside, and I asked him for some help on setting up one inside because it's a little bit different, and you don't want to be flooding your floor and that type of thing. But it does look like a fun little project, and I think it might be really good for things like lettuce and plants that are real high in moisture content. So, anyways, we'll be doing some garden cleanup. I'm going to introduce you to the horse and donkey, and we'll get some things going there. And I want you to be thinking about your fasting and not just on a food fast, but spiritual fast, getting rid of maybe some things on TV that aren't healthy for you. For some of you, that might be news. It might just really bring you a lot of grief and anxiety. For some, it might be shows that are showing things that I would consider unwholesome, um, and maybe a lot of demonic stuff. I can't watch secular TV for the most part because it's so dark and it has so many things that really bother my spirit. But it's a process. A few years ago, they wouldn't have bothered me at all. So it's part, I think, of maturing into my faith with the Lord and knowing His Word and knowing what grieves Him. And just like when you were a child, you didn't want to make your parents unhappy and you tried to do behavior that's made them pleased with you. Well, we want to do the same thing with the Lord. And so just think about those things. It's going to be a great month. It might be a difficult month. I really truly think that poly crisis is on, the cusp. So be prepared. You want a healthy body, you want a healthy mind, you want a healthy soul, and you'll survive it. But if you think that you can do it without the Lord and you can do it without getting healthy, I got a feeling you're gonna have a rough road. And it's gonna be financial too. So, put some money aside. Invest in a little extra food so that you're not, when the food prices skyrocket, what 200 baht now is going to be 4 or 600. You may not be able to buy as much. So that stuff that you put aside will buffer that so that you still are able to eat well. I just saw a post from a friend who's traveling through Australia and has been for 8 years, and the amount of homelessness all over the world has increased drastically. People are having to give up their homes and give up the things they love, like their pets, and pet food has gone up tremendously. I used to have eight dogs, four big ones and four little ones, and you know, a bag of a 40 or 50 pound bag of dog food was, 20, maybe $30 for a really high end. Now you're looking at it costing 45 to $200 for that same bag. And instead of being 50 pounds, it's 35 to 40. So that shrinkflation is going on as well. And I was looking at getting a livestock guardian dog, and I just don't know that I can do that and guarantee that I can feed it long term. And, it's a lifetime investment. So I'm looking at, 12, 15 years of feeding this animal. Would I like a big dog out on the property protecting things? Absolutely. Can I afford it? I don't know that I want to push my budget to that level. The hay prices have already gone up, grain prices have already gone up. And I can remember it was probably 3, 4 months ago. Chewy had a new brand that was theirs. It was a wonderful brand. It was low in grains, it had no soy in it. And for a 40-pound bag, it was $35. I'm like, yes, rocket. And so I got a couple bags. The next time I went to order, it was $45. And now it's $55. And it's still one of the lesser expensive, but boy, when things are rising at that kind of rate over just a matter of a couple months, it makes you question, how long will this go on? And I talked to you in other videos about things like coffee and olive oil and things that are imported, that I would definitely make sure you have a decent stock of that. I'm not saying be a hoarder. You don't have to be a prepper, but think about these things, because I guarantee the price is going to continue to go up. And if you look back to World War II, what things were rationed? Okay. Coffee was rationed, gas was rationed, sugar was rationed, meat was rationed. And we've already talked about how they're going after the meat supply. And I just saw that another chicken processing center went up in flames. So you have cattle wrangling going on where they're stealing, sometimes hundreds at a time. I mean, just crazy. But a lot of smaller ones. We have weirdos going around just shooting cattle and horses, which just, grieves my heart to no end. And then we have prices going up like crazy. I mean, when I see somebody buying a roast and it's $80, I mean, pot roast used to be my go-to because you could get, quite a few meals out of one pot roast, and it was relatively inexpensive. Not anymore. Now, I do buy local, and I buy a half a beef at a time or a quarter beef at a time. And I would recommend you look into that, because you're going to get much more wholesome beef. The cattle are usually butchered more humanely, and get some friends together and go in on it together if you can't afford or don't have a need for that yourself. But by having that put aside, now the downside of it is you're probably gonna have to freeze it, and if there's a power outage or EPM, you might lose that if you don't have a generator. So you got to weigh everything. I'm not telling you what's right for you. I'm just giving you some suggestions and a heads up that there is a poly crisis coming. And I know that I feel ready. Are there things that I can do better? Sure. I would have, like, I don't have a well here, so I would like a better water storage system, especially because I have livestock, and, they drink a lot of water, um, about 16 gallons a day, between the two of them. So that's a lot of water. Um, but I have a creek, and I have water filtration, and I have a couple big ways of collecting rainwater. It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. And, it's a work in progress. I'm not going to stress about it. I know that I'll do better than the average. I have ways to cook. I have ways to make coffee. I have ways to stay warm. And, would I like a wood stove? Yeah. But again, I have a really tiny cabin, and there's not much space for one. And then finding somebody that really knows what they're doing to put one in is another thing. So it's on the wish list, but it's not the end of the world if I don't have one. So look at your own, and there's pros and cons to it. The smoke coming out of the chimney is a way to know where you're at. And I know that's not like, what are you talking about? Trust me, when things get hard, people are going to be looking for people to loot. They're going to be looking for places to stay. They're going to be looking for food. They're going to be looking for shelter. And the world's already going nuts. We talked about the solar storms and how it impacts our own internal energy. And for many, you add that to the 5G and the increased radiation from the blue screens, and people are going nuts. And I think there is a physiological reason for it. I don't think, and then add drugs to that on top of it. But at least for me, knowing that there's a physiological real reason for this gives me a little hope because we can get rid of some of that. Okay. We can ground ourselves by walking in the grass. We can ground ourselves by getting into God's word. We can get good sleep. We can exercise so our body's functioning on maximum. There's a reason that in basic training they exercise and they don't get a lot of sleep, but why they make the body stronger because they want their soldiers fit mentally, physically, and they ignore the spiritual, which I feel is the most important. But anyways, back to the 6 days of Christmas, creation. Think about creating your garden wherever you are. If you live in an apartment, think about a green stalk grow tower. They're a little right around $100, and they're well worth it. I mean, you grow a lot of produce in a small area. I've been really happy with mine so far, and I got mine in October, and I've been working with it indoors, which is a little bit more tricky because I got aphids almost immediately. Which, if you've ever dealt with them, especially indoors, they can devastate really quickly. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but I think I got them under control and things are starting to thrive again. It just set me back a bit, but I've harvested 4 or 5 times now already. And so, that's good, wholesome, fresh food, straight. I literally pick it and eat it. There is no wait time. The nutrition is as full as it's going to be, and it tastes so much better. And so, consider that. No matter where you are, they fit in a 2 by 2. So even if you just have a small little lanai or balcony, you should be able to do it. If you don't have space at all, you can put them inside. Just put something like one of those mats that go under water heaters, so that if they drip, you're not ruining your floors. Okay, so think about those things because if you were at all like me, if it can happen, it will happen. I expect things to go bad, and they just do. People are like, "Oh, you have it so easy." It's like, "Oh, you have no idea. It is not easy." But I'm prepared for it mentally, and I'm learning to not get grieved and upset by stuff when they go bad. I mean, because it happens. It happens all the time. And so if I let that upset me, then I'm miserable all the time. Instead, it's just kind of like, yeah, another challenge. And guess what? Those challenges are preparing us for a future that, nothing good is easy, right? Even like with the horses, I've done all my own training. And yes, I've gone to trainers, but I've sat on the horse and done it. I haven't expected somebody to get on my horse and have the horse do it. Because really, I'm not training the horse so much, I'm training me. I'm learning to be a better rider. I'm learning to be softer. I'm learning to be better at cueing. It's like dancing. If you go to dance lessons, you need to do it. You need to do the cha cha cha. Your feet need to go, where they need to go. And if you don't work on you, it's never going to get better. You can watch tennis all day long. That's not going to make you a good tennis player. You can watch golf all day long. It's not going to make you a good golfer. We have to do things. And normally, the first few times we do it, it doesn't go so well. And it's discouraging. I taught adults, and they have a really hard time looking stupid. But if I've learned anything in life, it's a series of going from beginner to semi-expert to beginner to semi-expert. And if you're not willing to go through that process, you are going to stunt yourself. Sure, there's things that aren't much fun. There's topics that people don't like, but most of the time when they don't like it, it's because in some way it's convicting them to be a better person. So don't avoid those. Embrace them as I'm going to grow. I'm going to get better. And if it doesn't work, that's something like gardening. I For the last few years I've heard, "We'll grow a garden, we'll grow a garden," and I'm just laughing to myself because it's like I've been gardening my whole life. And it's not just go grow a garden. There are a lot of things that happen. Luckily, God's very gracious, and a lot of times beginners have a wonderful garden at first. But then the next year, some kind of weird bug comes in, bean beetles or cabbage worms or something, and they destroy your whole potato beetles, and they destroy your whole crop. And they can do it literally overnight. So it humbles you. You go, "Oh, I didn't see that one coming." The aphids in I didn't see that coming. I didn't have aphids all year long outside. Where they came from, I don't know. They came in on the wind. But that's something going back to this polycrisis. There is true evidence that DARPA and the military use ticks and mosquitoes in warfare to hurt the military so that they can go in and win battles. Do not think that they won't use that against us. And I know last year I had like ticks were a horrible problem here. I mean, it was, and it literally was like they were dropped from the sky. Now, I'm not saying they were, but it's possible. And if you look at the research into Lyme disease, they started in Lyme, Maine, and right near there across the river was where they were doing research on ticks. Do you think that was a coincidence? You know, the Hebrew language does not have a word for coincidence. So you take that for what it means. I think it means that coincidences really aren't a thing. That's just our way of kind of, yeah, I don't want to deal with that, so it's a coincidence. Do not put it past the evil people in this world to do things like that. Gain of function is another example of it, okay? So be prepared. You know, the answer isn't more toxic chemicals. The answer is cover yourself up, right? Check your body for ticks right away. And um, doxycycline, 1 or 2 days of doxycycline is a prevent. If let's say you have a tick and you find it and it's bitten you and it's attached, talk to your doctor about getting a couple doses of doxycycline. Why? Because it will protect you from most tick-borne diseases. And if you take it early, you only need 1 or 2 doses. So talk to your doctor about that. It makes much more sense to me than taking drugs for months and months and months and having maybe years of um, problems from these diseases. Ideally, you don't get bit at all. But let me tell you, if you have dogs and you live near the woods like I do, even if you wear hats and long sleeves, I was painting fence and I had to get under these bushes. And I swear to God, every time I did it, I came back in and there was a doggone tick. And I was like, oh. And luckily, they were all in places that I could pick off myself. But, you know, I don't like them. They're disgusting little animals. Um, Ivermectin is another one too that is good against parasites. And I know in my horses it keeps the ticks off. I'm not saying in people it does, but talk to your doctor about it. Okay. Just be aware. And, you know, I take a preventative stance with my animals too. I do my best to keep them worm free and to keep them healthy so that there aren't worms out in the pasture so that, you know, I'm not getting exposed to them. And my dogs aren't getting exposed to them because guess what? Dogs eat horse poop. They do it. You're not going to stop it. When you're not looking, they're going to get a bite. It just happens. But I also have to be careful because I have dogs that are MDR1 sensitive, meaning that ivermectin can kill them. So if I just worm my horses, my dogs aren't anywhere near horse poop for at least a few weeks because I don't want to take a chance that that goes through into the poop and kills my dogs. And I'm very careful about how I dispose of the syringe that they come in and that type of thing. But I'll show you how I worm my horses. It's really easy. Keep them from spitting it out. And you can do rotational worming. You can do it by ova and worm, you know, in the poop to see if they're actually there. You kind of have to look at your region, talk to your vet, figure out what works best for you. Um, there, I just don't believe in one size fits all, is what I'm saying. So it's, you know, there's cost, there's all sorts of things, and you have to determine it. As long as you're reaching a healthy state, I think you're doing it right. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to let you go. You have a very blessed day. I have not looked at the news today, so I don't know what's going on. But I'm sure a lot because I think we are in the time of active labor, and you know, you walk out of the room and the woman has 2 more contractions. That's just how it works. And so the world is in travail. Earthquakes are going up in their number, like we talked about from the solar craziness. And I expect that. Am I worried about it? No, I can't do anything about it. I can just pray and ask for a hedge of protection. So worry, you just lose today about tomorrow. That's crazy. So I'm going to enjoy the day. The sun is out. I put the horses out in the pasture. I'm going to go work on some garden beds that need cleaning up and maybe put some compost down. Play with the puppy dogs and check my plants in the shop because they're they don't have they have a heat pad, but they don't have any heat around them, so they're a little bit I got to make sure they don't need water because the heat pad causes a little bit of loss of moisture. And some of those brassicas need to be transplanted into the grow tower. And start thinking of plans. Okay, let's get a garden etched out and look at what we're going to grow this next year. And I'll help you the best I can to have a beautiful, prospering garden. Have a great day. Love you. Bye bye.